MyCore is on a mission to be the world's most people-centric company. The purpose of this podcast is to get to the core of people. I'm your host, Nathan Bourne, and I invite you to join me as we deep dive into the personal and professional lives of our guests. We're going to learn who they are, why they exist, and what they do. We're going to hear their stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly. In other words, we're going to talk to some really cool people. Welcome to the MyCore podcast. Hello. Nathan Bourne, your host here of the MyCore podcast, and I am super stoked to be here with Lee Walker. What's up, bro?
Hey, Nathan. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too,
long.
man. Yeah, we were just together in Denver for a few days, which is exciting, and got time to hang out and kick it. We actually roomed together, so got to have some good time and really enjoyed that last night. No Diddy, where we were downtown and grabbed a drink and had some good convo. But yeah, man, I'm really excited to do this episode and have this conversation and have you on the podcast.
Yeah, excited to be here too. We've been talking about it for a while, so it's glad to get it going. I know we tried to get it in Florida, and unfortunately, it's the one place I haven't really spent much time recently.
Yeah, I know. All your traveling, I thought Jacksonville would make the cut, but I guess it's not cool enough for you, man. I understand.
maybe next tour around.
Yeah, right. Well, add me to the tour dates. But yeah, let's talk about how we met, man. I think it would be a good context for your background for what I know you're going to be speaking on at our event in Eugene, Oregon, which super excited about that. And then I figure we could weave that into, your personal story. As we say, the purpose of this podcast is to get to the core of people, good, bad, and ugly. And I want to get into your deep, dark secrets and childhood trauma and, all the things. But maybe we could share how we met, because it's been, we didn't plan it, but we had like almost a little 3-year friend anniversary in Denver where we originally met, and we were there just last month. So I think it literally was August, maybe it was September of 2022 in Denver when we met.
Yeah, it was at Gusto Next, and they were really releasing their people advisory services that they were really pushing forward and doing their acceleration program. That was one of the 2 tracks you could choose, I think, for the first day. And at some point you stood up and was like, hey, I think I'm the only person here that's not an accountant, and I just do people advisory work. And I didn't speak up because you were, holding the floor as usual. And then they continued on. But we met in the bathroom about 20 minutes later. I was like, hey, I'm actually doing the same thing. I'm working at an accounting firm, but I came there to build a people advisory for service as well. And my background comes from business psychology. So I was like, yeah, I'm building a service here, using this as a way to get a little bit more insight on how others are doing it and build in my own. And so we started from there, chatted. I met a good bit of your team at the time. And since I was living in Denver, it was a pretty easy connection to get over to Gusto Next. And I think it's just been like that ever since. We just kept in touch. We've, when I was building the service, we had some conversations around how, we could work together, and some ideas on what I was doing, and, back and forth. And I think we've had a really good relationship, bouncing back ideas back and forth since then for the last 3 years. And now we met back up in Denver a couple weeks ago and back to the Gusto office. I remember you posing as like, hey, I took this exact pose the first time I heard of Gusto. Yeah. Let's recreate this. And I almost got hit by a bus because of it.
I was going to say that. I really was like, if Lee dies right here taking pictures of me in front of the Gusto headquarters, I don't know that there's a better way to go out. So, no, but at one point I was like, this is not, this doesn't look right. Number one. Number two, there's a bus coming, bro. You need to move because you were standing in the middle of the road. But thank you for taking those pictures. I didn't mean to be weird about it, but it was kind of a moment for me too. I was out in Denver at their headquarters in 2019, shortly after forming a partnership. And I had kind of the same pictures. I looked a lot younger, but and I just was sort of being reflective as we were walking downtown, thinking about the journey, thinking about the last 7 years, and it was a cool moment, man. So yeah, you and I met in the bathroom, which is kind of a funny way to interact, but I think just alignment wise, like how you roll, the things that you value in life, and even around like, I don't know, experience. I love telling this story because you came out to our event in that was Seattle, right?
Now Seattle, yeah.
Yeah, just about 9 months ago. Yeah, in the fall. And I mean, I could tell that you dress well and that you're like worldly, and I was like, pretty sophisticated dude. And you were like, hey, let's all go get some food. So then Laura and Brian Minyard and we went to. Did you know that place, or did you like look it up? I feel like you're just a great like connoisseur of. And we're going to talk about your wine connoisseur life too. But you must have researched it, or was that random because we hit the jackpot?
I just looked up a good Indian restaurant, and I just have my basically safe filters like above 4.5 stars, open at certain hours. Let's go see what's there, and we were really lucky to have one that was, I think, like 5-6 blocks away. And so I was like, all right, I love Indian food. We're in a good area for it. Let's go.
Well, you led the charge, man. Like we talk about it. Laura and I will talk about it. Brian and I will talk about it because I think just, you're at an event, you're like, yeah, let's go grab a bite. Sounds good. Sure. And we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. I mean, this was like the Lee Walker experience, man. So we got there, I'm going to tell this story real quick because I think it says something about you. And I kind of have questions around like, why are you the way you are? Like, because I actually both value it and envy it. Like, I'm the worst. Like, I don't even know where I am in like time and space most days, where I just am inside my head. I'm awful at like mapping out or planning things that are enjoyable. Frankly, like I struggle with stopping and smelling the roses because I'm just I don't know, like big picture thinker, and I'm always kind of heads in the clouds and envisioning the future. And you just sort of pulled us into this moment, and I thought it was really neat. So I'm going to take a moment and gas you up about it, if that's cool.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So we go to this restaurant. Again, we don't realize that Lee like knows exactly what he's doing. Like we're all just like, yeah, we're just going to get Indian food, like no big deal. And you do what normal people do, especially for adult humans, and you sit down and start looking at the menu and think about what you're going to order. And then there was like this moment where we sort of realized, like, I think Lee knows this food and like knows exactly what to order and in what order and like in what sequence. So I think we just sort of relinquished and we're like, bro, just go, man. Like you do you, boo boo. And you just like took command and we're like, we'll do this dish. That pairs nicely with, and we're like, damn, Lee, let's go. And I think between the wine flowing and the choices that you made, it was like one of the best meals that I've ever had. It was awesome, man. And we talk about it all the time because we're like, what just happened? Like, how did Lee just like put us under some spell? And then kind of like I blacked out. I felt like I was Will Ferrell in Old School, where I just like came back to, was like, we have to get back to the event. Like we have to go. So kudos to you, man. You have like a way of creating an experience around like food and wine, and I'm sure that's bled into your client experience and business and your interactions. I have to know, like, where does that come from, man? Like, how did you get into this sort of genre of life, because then having hung out with you more and then going to the winery like we did in Denver, like you really know your shit when it comes to wine specifically. Tell
Mhm.
me a little bit about like where that started. Was that a hobby? Is that something you've always jammed on, or is that newer?
Yeah, so I would actually attribute most of that to my sister. So
Cool.
growing up, she was always really curious about food and food experimentation. My parents weren't really all big into that. I probably didn't have like spinach I enjoyed or try any Indian food until I was around 15.
Okay.
Um, but my sister really loved food, and she was 4 years older, and so she would always introduce new interesting things. Like one, I remember the first time she's like, "Oh, here, let's have some bone marrow," and my thought was, I'm like, "I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, you want
You
to
eat that?"
chew on a femur? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. But because of that, and because where I grew up in Maryland, between Baltimore and DC, was a very international area, especially growing up, it got more and more international. So always really great food places were coming up. And so once I got exposed to it, largely again through her, and then one of the big turns was when we went to England for the first time. It was the first time I left the country. I was about 14, and we had Indian at this restaurant in London, and it was amazing. Because if you've been to England, you know that their best food is Chinese and Indian food, and so I think that was my real exposure and real
I did
exposure into
not know that,
travel.
by the way.
You
I
didn't?
was today years old when I learned that, so I'm just gonna take notes on this. Yeah, you're gonna
Yeah,
help me become refined, man.
yeah. So, and the reason is because what's the English alternative? Fish and chips,
Right.
blood pudding, things of that nature.
Right.
But where the magic is the Asian food that they have there. So that just kind of increased my interest in it, and it kept snowballing. I ended up traveling a lot, and as I started going to other countries more and trying just new unique foods and what the different combinations of everything. Whereas my sister, of course, pushing into things I'd never heard of, like that Indian menu where you guys are like, I don't know what this is, and even the descriptions kind of don't really make sense. And I was
I
like,
would
oh
have
yeah.
just gotten bread. Like, I know I love the naan. Like, other than that, I have no idea what's on that menu. So that's
Yeah.
cool. You knew
So she
exactly what you're doing. So this is something that started at 15. So you've had 15 plus years of like refining your choices around Indian
Mhm.
food specifically, but just food in general.
Yeah, and then of course wine came into it a little bit later.
At
Um,
16. No, yeah.
more like 17, I think. I'd
17.
tried it a few times, and I was like, "What is this like
So,
spoiled grape
all
juice?"
jokes aside, you started drinking wine at like 17. I'm not talking about from a legal standpoint, just most 17-year-olds are like, yeah, give me a Four Loco or a Natty Light, especially if you're in Maryland. But you were drinking like wine at 17?
I was like, I started with the sweet wine, where everyone starts, like the stuff
Where everyone
that
starts.
is grape juice.
Right.
And then you kind
Communion.
of develop your palate. Yeah, exactly. Um, but the crazy thing is, my sister started working at a wine restaurant, I think at 16, 17, maybe 18. And so she was starting to get into the wine world at a really early age.
Okay.
And so she would bring home wines to the family, and we'd try them and be like, I don't know. But we started going to vineyards more. And it wasn't until I went to semester at sea when I was 23, and then they had this class called Geography of Wine, which you're like, I could see your face. You're like, oh, that's so
Yeah.
interesting. What was crazy about it is there's, some actually big wine professors in the country, and one of them is based out of Virginia Tech. And so he's not just a wine teacher, but he's also a geography teacher. So we're learning about the wines as we're going to these 12 countries and why they're unique and things like that. And through that course, we learned about how history and culture has impacted the wines and foods, and how that's also impacted history and culture as well, going both directions. We ended up at this winery in Peloponnesia in Greece, where we were able to try like the same varietal of wine from like 1,000 feet versus like 6,000 feet on the same general mountainside, but how you can see the difference in the flavors from elevation changes largely. And
That's
so,
cool.
yeah, so it's led to a lot of really cool experiences. I've ended up working in a few vineyards on the farming side of it. I've worked on as the tasting room associate, and then most recently, I was working at the Waldorf Astoria in Amsterdam for the last few months. I was in Europe before COVID hit, and so I got a ton of exposure to the wine industry and got my parents more into it since it wasn't just my sister bringing home good wine. Now I was bringing home good wine. So now my parents drink wine a lot as well.
Dude, that is so cool, man. I love the family aspect of it, the community aspect. And you when you say like the farming, you out like picking grapes? Like what did that look like?
So it's all seasonal. I was usually there in like June, or July. So I was like more clipping the vines, getting them ready for uh, when the grapes actually really start growing. Some of it was putting in netting. Right before when COVID hit, actually, I was volunteering on this vineyard in Switzerland, which I had gone back to. And I spent a majority of the time just pile driving in stakes that you then tied the vines, the trunk of the vines to, for support. And after like 4 days of that, I was like, it's kind of funny because I kind of bleeds into my like escape of Europe during COVID story. But I was having to make this decision: do I stay at this vineyard until COVID leaves, where they really want me to, or do I fly back home to my parents? And I was like 4 days in, I was like, I think I'm going to leave in an ambulance if I stay here for another 2 months. I was like, my back's already killing me. I've already like got three
Right.
cuts and my ankle's hurting, and I'm like, this isn't going to get better.
Right. You had your fair share of manual labor essentially, and we're like, yeah, this is not for me.
Yeah, I was lifting like a 50-pound jackhammer, and just like lifting it up and then jamming things down and doing that for 6 hours straight.
Yeah, that's brutal, man.
Granted,
So what is
without
it
injury, my
like?
muscles would have been huge.
Right, you're
I
already
look
tall,
like
man.
you.
You can't have it all. So um what would you say like with this? I mean, I don't know. I feel like when you get around people that maybe know their stuff with wine, you think it's like there's levels to this stuff, right? There's levels to the shit. So like
Mm-hmm.
you're on like another level, like color coded, like you keep a Google sheet. And then when we went to that winery, like you were using words that my ears have just never heard ever. I'm like, what is happening right now? So obviously there's like a depth, like you've gone down the rabbit hole. Is this like how you are? Like, do you obsess over things, or is there something specifically about wine? Like, I want to know the psyche behind this. I don't know if you've processed this, but like it's a little bit outlier ish from the standpoint of your expertise. Like most grown ass men in their early 30s don't have even the slightest knowledge of wine. I mean, I know the basics. Like I like a good Pinot Grigio. I'm joking. But a little Merlot. No, I know enough about like red versus white and the different like, kind of spectrum of each and sweeter and like, but that's very basic. Like I'm a Pinot
Mm-hmm.
Noir. That's kind of my go-to if we're drinking wine. But
Mm-hmm.
like how did you get to that, man? I mean, you said your sister, but like there's got to be more there, man. Is it like unpredictable so you like that? Is it predictable so you like what is it about like who you are that has led to this kind of hobby, especially because you don't do it professionally? So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like I'm talking to a wine. I am talking to a wine connoisseur, but not like because we're on like the Food Network or something.
Mm-hmm. So when I'm interested in something, I actually have a little bit of a aversion to really mastering things. I really have to force myself to do it a lot of times. So I enroll in classes, I enroll into different programs, I get a job that's related to it. Um, that's how I miss Spanish. That's one of the reasons I moved down to South America. Because I was like, I know I'm not going to practice on my own. I've got a million other things to do, and if I'm going to make it a priority, like I'm going to force myself to go do that and learn that. But because it was something that was interested in me, I did take the class, and then I was just constantly getting rewarded for it because as I'm like drinking good wines, I'm like, oh, I appreciate this more. I'm getting more out of it, and it's like maybe I should learn a little bit more about it and learn a little bit more about it. And then I would start going to vineyards, to wineries and the tastings and talk to them about it. And because they knew that I knew what I was talking about, they'd be like, oh, we'll try this and try this. And so now, because of that, like I think I told you, I've told a bunch of people, it's like going to a winery with me is not like going to a winery with just about anybody else. I'm going to chat
I
with
thought we were gonna get some tapas, a little wine, bro. I got a tour. Like I got schooled up, like even to the point where I was like, bro, I'm not tracking. Like it's not clocking for me what you're saying right now. Like you need to give me a glossary. Real quick insertion here, and then back to you in the
Mhm.
studio. In your dating life, I would imagine that girls like this, like that this is something. I mean, maybe you have to govern how much you know so that it's not like, I don't know, like off the, like they might not think like, oh, is this person like obsessed, or, but
Mhm.
I'm curious how you like bake that in a little bit, because I would imagine there's some eyebrow raise where like women are probably like, oh damn, he like knows all about wine.
It there's definitely a balance to it. I think it's one of those things like, oh, that's really cool. That's he's cultured at first,
Yeah.
and then they enjoy being at the winery and like getting those extra 7 pours and like the unique stuff that they had open that they'll know I'll appreciate that the owner just happened to open that day. And then there's other times where like, all right, well, stop talking about the wine. I don't care anymore.
I was gonna ask. I was gonna ask you: has anyone ever been like, "Will you stop talking about the wine?" And you're like a kid that just can't stop talking about like dinosaurs or something. Like you're like, "Well, actually, this is the Pteranodontlaptor." Like, have you had that happen where like you have to like reel it back?
Yeah, or like, I was hoping there's gonna be a time for us to really connect and deeply know each other more deeply. And now I just know more about wine, but I don't know anything more about you. And I was like, all right, that's
Oh,
fair.
you said
Sorry.
that's fair. So you get kind of like caught up in it. Where you're like, "My bad, I really like lost myself."
Yeah, I'm
Well,
like,
not to
yeah,
mention you're drinking, so it's not even just like, you're talking about baseball
autopilot.
cards. You're also probably getting a little sloshed in the process.
hmm Yeah, and then it's like more about, I was like, oh, yeah, this is great, right? Like, are you getting this out of it? And it's like, yeah, sure, Lee, whatever.
So, are there like, I don't really know a lot about dating, but like maybe maybe like, is there's got to be like wine clubs or something that you could meet women that like are equally, or would you be like competitive in that way and you'd be like, this is no fun for me because I like being the expert. Have you ever dated a girl or been on a date where you had like equal understanding of wine?
Actually, yeah. So I'm not officially a sommelier. I know 99% as much as like a level one, some like level two, depending on what the topic is. But I did date a girl that was a sommelier in Denver like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and we knew different things about it. So like she knew a lot more about Spanish wine. I personally just don't like Spanish wines as much as a personal preference, and so I wouldn't say we had arguments, but it was like we learned a little bit from each other, but then we'd also have learned different things on the same topic. And I wouldn't say it got into an argument. I was like, oh, interesting. Like that's not what I remember, but I wouldn't say I have a huge ego on it. Not as much as I used to. Where I had been to wineries and would correct the tasting person because they would say something that was entirely off base. And I was like, that's not true. Like you shouldn't be telling people that. I think I had one that's like, yeah, white wines naturally ferment to 16%. I was like, that's just not a
That's not a
fact.
thing.
That's just not true. Like on average, they get to like 12%. Like you can get it up to 16, but it depends on the grape and the sugar content from the sun that year. But that's not normally how that works. Like you'd have to inject more sugar into it to get to that level most of the time, which is very common in Germany, even to get to like 10% for their Rieslings.
Doing it
But
right
like,
now. You're going off right now. I
yeah,
love this.
I had to keep it full circle. So,
Right.
but yeah, now I just look over at my friends and I'm like, yeah, that's like not true. Like
Right. Just
if
like,
you don't believe me here, I'll Google it in 2 seconds.
dude, that is funny. Do you have any other equally obsessed interests or like close seconds? Like, is there anything else that you're like, you've gone deep into?
Really just like self development.
Cool.
So, like I mentioned, I did business psychology. It came from a large interest in psychology of why we do what we do, especially social psych. And then I just learned to apply that to business because that was my secondary focus. And I was like, I love snowboarding more than both of them,
I
but I
love
don't really learn much about it. I just like to
do
live
it.
it and go in the flow. People were like, oh, well, what about this snowboarder and that board and this, that, and the other? I'm like, look, man, I've been doing this for 18 years and I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yep. You're like, Burton is all I know. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. I'm like, I always shop for the stuff from a season late that's 60% off. And I like to do a comparison like, hey, what's the best value? What's going to get me what I'm looking for? And there we go.
Yeah, man. It's interesting. I think about this often that like there's two types of people in the world. There's thinkers and there's doers. And I have found this is like world according to Nathan stuff,
Mm-hmm.
where if you're strictly a thinker, you're an academic, education, higher education, having a bunch of acronyms after your name is your jam. I respect that, and
Mm-hmm.
having I think it's a Northeast thing. Maryland's kind of probably like where it ends, and then you go into Philly and New York, and obviously New England. You have the Ivy Leagues, and you have government, and you just have like a lot of education in that part of the country. A lot of like intellect, and then out west, like I was just in Oregon. I noticed it's a lot of doers, right? That like they find their way in this world through like hiking and mountain climbing and surfing and biking, um, which even though I'm a really active person and was an athlete, and do CrossFit, tell everyone, I
Headline.
I'm more of a thinker than a doer. Like I get more out of like a conversation like this or getting coffee and like pondering the wonders of the universe. I think in business, particularly like entrepreneurship, you have to find a way to be both of these things. Like you can't just do it, because if you're an owner operator and you're not working on it and you're not thinking through it and you're not like creating these conversations to go like, well, could we do that differently? Or just because it's been done that way forever, it will really like curb innovation if you're not thinking and doing and doing and thinking. But I
Mm-hmm.
just find that interesting because I can typically, I try not to like label people, but I can kind of find pretty quickly if somebody is strictly a doer, strictly a thinker. I mean, if you're neither, I don't know what to tell you. You're screwing
You're
up.
just there.
You're just, yeah, like good luck. Best of luck to you. But I think it's the people that can do both of these things, that can think and do and think, that tend to find the breakthrough. So it sounds like you're a doer. You're willing to like get into the trenches, take risk, go for it, like literally grab your passport and travel and see the world. But you're not just strictly a busybody. You take time to personally develop and to read leadership books and really like grow internally.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Oh, you were just really still. I thought you froze for a second. That was like you're stoic, man. Like literally. Um, so anyway, I'm kind of just saying all that to say that professionally, you've found this groove in people operations, people advisory. Um, have you always had an interest in human behavior? Are you I'm a people watcher. Like I can sit,
Mm-hmm.
I'm from Ocean City, Maryland, and I know you're familiar with Ocean City. Like I would just sit on the boardwalk with my buds, like in high school, and just watch people. And then we would kind of antagonize or like, just do juvenile dumb stuff. But I can sit at an airport or a mall or a main street and just watch people, because people be people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's entertaining. Are you somebody that's interested in people, or is it just strictly like a job and you found yourself like, oh, this will fuel my wine addiction? Not addiction, but like habit or interest. I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of curious like how you found yourself in this people entrepreneur coaching space.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it really starts in childhood. And at first, I wanted to be an inventor. And I was just like, I just want to invent something cool and then be rich and, just do whatever the rest of my life. At that time, it was play video games. Since then, I don't play video games anymore. But then, because I was very argumentative throughout elementary and middle school, everyone just told me I should be a lawyer. And so I was like, all right, maybe I'll go into law. And then I learned I think I was like 14 or 15. I was like, oh, being a lawyer sounds terrible. Like, I don't want to just do research and stuff all the time. Like, I thought I was just going to be in court. And I was like, okay, we're going to get rid of that one. And I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I didn't grow up with a ton of great social skills in all reality. So I would just observe people like, why am I not having social success with people? And just kind of would start observing people. So I was definitely a people watcher. And that got me into social psychology.
Lee, I
And
want to go in on this because I feel like you threw something out there that if it's cool with you, I'd like to unpack. When
sure,
you say social, like how early are we talking in life? Like playground or like high school? Like when did you struggle socially?
probably always. Like
Always. Yeah.
so I mean, I guess it became more noticeable in middle of elementary school, like second or third grade. In kindergarten, it doesn't really matter. Everyone's friends with everybody. First grade, people start having more of like condensed friendships, and second grade a little bit more, and third grade a little bit more. And I grew up with two friends, one of them that I've known literally my entire life, and then another one that I think we met around the age of 5, and I considered him a best friend, but frankly, he just wasn't a very good friend to me.
Mm.
And they were pretty much the only two that you would know I would really even consider or talk about me as their friend growing up. And I always wanted to be friends with other people, and it just didn't really work out. I learned later in life that I was probably a little bit of a bully,
So you were the
unintentionally.
bully.
Yeah, but like not intentionally, just like I just didn't have good social skills. Um, yeah, to go a little bit deeper, like my mom grew up without a mother, and her dad was in the military. She bounced around family, so she didn't really have great social skills to, impress onto me uh,
Right.
or my sister. And that's through no fault of her own. That's just
That was her
the
programming, how she was informed. So did that make her? I'm kind of interested here. Like maybe there's a. I'll just ask: was there a bit of like an emotional lack that maybe because that's what you modeled? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're saying that your mother wasn't overly emotional,
mm-hmm,
so she was maybe stoic, or she was less. I don't want to say nurturing, but like less like
connecting.
connected to you, like maybe in a motherly way, and that got transferred to you. So then in your relationships, you didn't necessarily show up emotionally. So then there was an attachment or connection between you and the other party at like a limbic core level. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Yeah, what the field of psychology would call it is a avoidant attachment, as because I
Avoidant
wasn't
attachment.
really met at the level that I needed. And I only learned in the last couple of years that I probably have developed ADHD, and that started at a young age. but because I just wasn't really understood as a young child, I didn't really know how to interact with others. I like listened to more ADHD stuff. I went to the ADHD panel at Bridging the Gap last month, and they were saying more or less similar things. It's like, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense.
That
Where,
tracks.
yeah, and there's this it's not a podcast. It's a um, video by, I think, this guy Mark Guy, and he talks about how ADHD is a superpower. And he's like, when you were young, you probably didn't connect with people, and a lot of ADHD people are actually meant to be leaders. So that meant to really connect with a lot of the neurotypical people. And so, really, you just need to find other people that you do connect with, and then you'll have a little bit more of that two-way connectivity, essentially. And I also really felt that, and it's like, okay, so maybe these are a series of things in my childhood that caused, poor social skills. It's also a skill, but it didn't naturally occur with me, and that made it really hard. I didn't really start making friends that I think really liked me for who I am versus like what I could do for them until college.
No
Like a
shit, man. So
few in high school,
college,
but yeah.
Lee, you're making me sad, man. So you you went through all of high school or all of childhood, adolescence, and high school. Now, were you aware of loneliness? Like did you have a feeling of I'm alone? I mean, because you were going through the normal rhythm of school. Did you play sports? Like, were you part of any church or like organizations, like social groups, or you
hmm
literally like went to school, came home, and played video games? Like, what was your actual like flow like?
So I was involved in scouts pretty much my entire childhood. Even ended up through like early adulthood as well. I played football for 6 years, and like I'd always get like one friend, and so it's not like I didn't have friends. Like one of my best friends, he came down to see me in Peru 2 months ago, and we met through football. But I think of anybody I talked to from my football team, he's really the only one. And from high school, I have like three, maybe four people that I still keep in touch with. Um, Middle school, pretty much nobody. And yeah, so I went through with like
I find
one
this hard to
friend.
believe because my experience with you has been um nothing but sort of friendly and social, and we've been in social settings and done, like, I mean, I started our conversation talking about this great meal, and we still talk about it to this day. So
It's
is
been a
this
journey.
is this version of Lee different? Did you like kind of develop a person that wasn't maybe there or hadn't been unearthed? Or maybe the people you went to high school are just assholes, and like there's that.
Well, I think, and upon reflection, like I just wasn't, because of situations in my childhood, like I had to suppress my personality. So it didn't really
Okay.
come back out until college, where, and you hear this with a lot of people, like who they were in growing up and through high school is a completely different person than who they are when they're actually on their own, and their
Right.
personality is no longer being influenced as heavily by their parents and the environment that they grew up in. People are different people in different environments. And
Right.
so I think in college, when I was having a little bit more of the freedom to express myself more, is when I started being like, wow, I really need to change this. One of the things I did when I was 16 is decided, hey, I don't really want to do football anymore because I don't want to be around uh, this necessarily the group of people. Like, there are a lot of people there that were overall in good habits and stuff, but there's a ton of people there with really bad habits, and it was
Right.
not overall a really positive, uplifting group. And then the head coach for varsity, I just didn't like very much. I didn't want to move on to that, and decided to get into snowboarding instead. Got rid of video games and decided to actually be more active in social and more positive circles. And that was a major change at 16. and of course to finally focus on my studies because I had been screwing off for years. And yeah, so it's definitely a bit of a transformation, and I think I suppressed who I was, and so because of that, I was angry all the time
Mm.
without really realizing it, and that made me act out with others, and that's why I didn't have that friendship growing up.
So it was a vicious cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I want to keep talking about this. I think I might have froze. Let me hit refresh real quick. The internet can be, but can you see where my face froze? It looks
Yeah,
pretty
it's not your
ridiculous.
most flattering angle. Well, your voice is back. It's a good spot for a commercial break.
Right, exactly. We'll insert a sponsored ad. Okay, we're back. Still recording audio. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay, so let's keep talking about this. So you were in this kind of vicious cycle where your emotion, personality, expression was suppressed. You mentioned your mother. Did your father contribute negatively or positively to this?
um, Also pretty negatively to it. There, not from him. I don't have any specific words that really stuck out, but also on his side of the family, it's a little bit more blue collar, a little bit more we call it rough and tough.
Right, yeah.
And so whenever the thought of like I'm not really happy, it's like, oh well, buck up, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
And
suck it up, buttercup.
yeah. And one quote that I have from my grandmother that, really stuck with me is she would always be like, because she was frustrated that I was acting out or just not obeying and, wanted explanations for things, would always call me the devil child. And my sister's always the angel. So there was always this dichotomy until I changed my behavior and suppressed who I really was, that I was always the problem child for at least 5 years. And then the conversation became, oh, well, he's such a good boy now and everything. So I had all this reinforcement to not really be who I was, to just comply more than
Interesting.
express myself. And it really inhibited my ability to express myself in a way that was healthy or
Right.
useful or pro social, for not lack of a better word. But
Yeah. Now, was your sister expressive? Like, was she both the angel and the like performer and kind of like, hello, I'm here? Or was she docile?
no, she's typical older child
Okay.
behavior. If you ever read the birth order book, it describes how the when you were born in your family has an impact on your personality, and it's not
Right.
100% the factors, but it's pretty common. So
Yeah.
she, being the older child, being very active, being very friendly, very pro family, very let's go with it, would but that's what they saw. But at the same time, she also wasn't having her emotional needs met by my parents, and especially as the older child, they usually get it harder because the parents make all their early mistakes on the first child. The second one gets a little bit easier. They also get
Yeah.
attention, so she wasn't getting the attention she needed from our parents either, and so she would take that out on me, and that's caused a lot of issues in me and her relationship that started getting a lot better once she went to college, moved out of the house, and continuously, for the most part, got better. But I was kind of feeling like an emotional estrangement from everybody around me for most of my childhood. And my two best friends growing up also didn't grow up in like good households. One of them had his mother was like divorced from a woman when we were like six, or sorry, divorced from a man that had beat her when we were like 6. She ended up in another relationship and moving, and so he left with her. Another friend of mine, his father had self-ejected himself when we were children. So she married another man that also had a very, I'll say, with conventionally poor decisions that kind of created a lot of really odd dynamics for my two closest friends in very, very tumultuous households. And so I didn't really get that really solid social skill feedback and relationships through them either, because they're also going through it.
Right. That's an interesting combination of like social connection and like just the way you made your way through the world. Was your home, it sounds like your parents had it together, but were sort of devoid of emotional, like EQ, like there wasn't a space for you to properly develop your emotional quotient. So then that caused struggle. Was there, when you had, I mean, I have a lot of, maybe sympathy is the word. Empathy is more of an altruistic term, but like I actually feel bad for you, like around that. You know, my home was chaotic and dysfunctional, but it was a whirlwind of emotion. It was like just a cluster F of emotion. But you've probably gathered from interacting with me that I'm expressive and, you know, it gets out, you know, I make sure of it. And some of that's unhealthy. And there's been moments where it's bit me in the butt, you know, but overall that has sort of served me in the way that I lead and, I don't know, evoke even like engagement from the standpoint of like people wanting to be around it, you know, because it's like, even though I think people can recognize like there's an underbelly to this, you know, like, oh shit, like this could go sideways if like the formula is wrong, you know, whether that's like anger or whatever, like, you know, I'm 36. I've kind of gotten that under check, but
Control.
I don't know, you know, I could just lose my shit, you know, on somebody. I was in Portland and or a Portland area, and there was this, I was just having a rough day, and I said to, and this is like wildly inappropriate, but it's me, so you're used to it. But
It's expected.
there's like homeless people everywhere, right? Because that's just what's going on there. And I was just talking about like I was frustrated about something on the personal side, and I was like, I could just freaking punch. I said, if I was a puncher, which I'm not because I don't want to break my hands, I was like, I would freaking punch a hole through that wall. And I was like, I just need to take a breather. I'm gonna beat up a homeless person. like it was like a ridiculous thing to say. Well, it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You got to be careful what you say, right? Because I'm telling you, 5 minutes later, Lee, we're at this coffee shop, and this deranged homeless guy comes in and he starts popping off on this poor woman who I think might have owned the cafe or was connected to like the building that we were in. And he was going off. And I stood there like ready to freak. I was like, if he does one thing, like if he comes at me, if he goes at her, like anything physical, I wasn't just going to like actually beat up a homeless person. But if it was like self-defense or protecting this person or people in the shop, I was like, this is about to go down. So I just stood by the door like real like, I dare you, dude. Today is not the day that you want to do this. And it diffused and he walked out. But it was wild because Curtis, who I know you know. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, you were just saying that. I was like, I know, that was weird, right? And it wasn't like I went out on the street or something or caused a scene. Obviously, it was just we're sitting in this coffee shop and the guy comes in with like a bag of cans or something and was just causing issues. So I say all that to say that like being expressive and getting it out and
Mm-hmm.
ventilating, it can be a double-edged sword. So did you pen the like this was all sort of pent up? Did you
Mm-hmm.
have any like I don't know, did you have a day of disgust? Was there a catalyst? Like what happened to the point where you were like, I need to change this or figure this out because I obviously was not equipped and this is not going for real well for me?
I think one day I just realized I was like, I'm just not happy. And I'm like, what can I do to start changing this? Um, Around that time, my girlfriend at the time had recommended me the Birth Order book. That was probably like the first psychology book that I really read. And I found it so interesting. I read it, all the way through pretty quickly. Um, and it's like, okay, well, I know a little bit more about myself, a little bit more about others. Um, I think one of the things that would help me is if I gained better social skills, took time to actually invest in doing those things. And so I stopped playing the video games as much, and I was like, all right, let me like actually reach out to people and try to spend more time with them outside of my day to day. And there's, I forget if it was around that time, but there's actually one summer where I had about 3 days, um, and it was specific to like how I just didn't feel like putting my sheets and stuff normally, and my bed was like this fold up couch, and I had it up, and I just like kept having these really crazy ongoing nightmares about like being tangled up and like being stuck and drowning and everything. And then I'd wake up like all tangled in my single sheet that I was using as like the top sheet and the cover sheet. Um, and the
And that
fitted.
physically happened like in the sheet. So you had it was more intense in the dream state, but you actually did toss and turn.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, so I wasn't really sleeping. I was kind of I was starting to hallucinate a little bit, like from lack of sleep over those couple
Right.
days, and I was having all these crazy ideas, and I was like, man, I think this is just indicative of a deeper issue. And so I started looking into that a little bit more, and started, I think, taking care of myself a little bit more, and considering all the things other than autopiloting my life of video games. And
Right.
so it's funny because I never did homework, and to this day, my parents will always joke about how like they could never really get me to do anything because they'd always make these like veiled threats of like, oh, if you don't do your homework, you're not going to succeed, and blah blah. And oh, if you don't really start your project, in a month in advance, you're not going to have time. And every single time, I still pass with like solid B's on everything.
Right.
And so they would always get really frustrated with that.
Yeah, because they were trying to teach you a lesson, but you just in the nick of time would pull it off, right? Which is probably a
Mm-hmm.
dangerous game, because eventually you could get burnt.
Yeah, that's definitely burnt me later in life where it's like, all right, well, oh, prepare. Like, I don't need to prepare. I'll be fine. And then
Right.
go through life and it's like, oh, it's not as easy as school was
Right.
anymore. Like, you got to actually prepare and be thoughtful about this stuff. So, is a lesson I learned a little bit too late.
Yeah, man. So how old were you when you were having those like sleeping issues and
I
losing your
think it
shit?
was I think it's around 16. I think it was all about the same time. That's also when I like restarted. So aside from, I guess, my first real college relationship, I had like two girlfriends, and they'd all been long distance. And so the first one, we were on and off for about 4 years, and because she had moved to Indiana about like 6 months after we met, and so we called it off. Then it was on and again, off again, and I guess that also was an interesting thing because when you have those relationships, I found that you don't really know who that person is in reality. You have this idea of who they are based on how
Right.
they represent themselves in the short
Right.
time of texting and calling. Whereas if you were like actually spending the time in person, maybe it's not the same, or you get to frustrations and things earlier. So you kind of have this perfect image of this person
Right.
that you don't really get to. And, that being my first relationship, I think impacted a lot of my other relationships. And so I had another long distance relationship after that, and then another one where we met in person. We ended up living together. So my first girlfriend, I actually got to see on a regular basis. We moved in together after about 6 months of dating. And I'm, my senior year of college, which is just crazy.
Right.
And I wasn't ready for it. And I mean, it taught me a lot, but it also came with a ton of frustrations. And I think that's when I finally learned what it's like to actually have a real girlfriend and like, oh, I actually have to think about this other person more. It's
Right.
no longer all about me.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that in all reality. I'm still getting better at it where I'm like, hey, if I'm really looking to have a serious relationship, like
Right.
I got to put their needs as a priority as well. And I definitely struggled to do that a lot earlier.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you being real in that. It's never fun to talk about the things that we struggle with, and I got a whole slew of. I heard it this way back when magazines were popular, when they were like a subscription, but it was like, I don't have issues, I have the whole subscription. Like I've got the whole freaking volume. So I mean, it seems like you've always kind of marched to the beat of your own drum, and kind of found your own way. And even with this context, and I know there's a lot more to that, but sort of
Mm-hmm.
understanding the family dynamic, the upbringing, your parents, that all tracks, that all clocks. Then I think the
Mm-hmm.
question becomes like, how's that going for you? And I think a lot of people will just settle into who they are. Um, I am what I am type stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel comfortable with people. I say it this way again, world according to Nathan, but um, like, okay, like let's go with 50%, like half and half. We'll do like half default, like who are you naturally, nature, nurture. So maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
like 25% nature, 25% nurture, and now you're at like 50% of your way. Well,
Mm-hmm.
let's like build the other 50%. And it can be idealistic, it can be something that doesn't even actually exist. But the pursuit and the journey of becoming or unbecoming that person is valuable and life-giving in and of itself. So
Mm-hmm.
we're close in age. I'm a little bit older, but I'm 36. I'll be 37 in October. And I'm at this interesting sort of intersection in life where half of my life in just time, I was a child, right? Naturally, 18
Mm-hmm.
years. And then the second half of my life, I've been like inventing and building and constructing this person
Mm-hmm.
that really isn't entirely, I don't want to say true because it's not like fake, but it's just like I built it, like I
Mm-hmm.
figured it out. I read the books, I went to the seminars, I got around the people so that I could literally carve like new neural pathways through my brain to change the way that I think and change the way that I act.
Mm-hmm.
And man, has that been tough, right? Because those grooves, they get
Are deep.
hardwired, right? I mean, there's like ruts in the road, you have to
Mm-hmm.
bust them up and like repave them. And like the person twirling the slow and stop sign, it's sometimes you just got to stop and be in it, and other times you're kind of muddling through and slowly grinding through it.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like you had a similar experience and are on a journey where you're like, okay, this isn't going that well for me. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have the relationships, the connections, dating isn't going, the romantic side of thing isn't going great. And then you've been embarked on or embarking on personal development, right? And change like almost like change management within yourself. And it sounds like you're on a good path.
I like to think so. And it's two things came to mind when you were talking. Is one is, uh, you know, I've been learning a lot recently, and I brought on a new therapist a few months ago, and he specializes in IFS, internal family systems. And when you're talking about those deep grooves and those aspects of yourself, you said the 50% versus what your has been there versus the 50% that you're continuously building. And specifically what you said is it was unjoining. No, what was the word you used?
Unbecoming.
Unbecoming.
Yeah.
So that word specifically said triggered me to think about this is the main term, and that is unblending. And so you have these different parts of you that are, vying for the attention, vying for what your thoughts are, vying for what comes out of your mouth. And so one of the main things is they talk about the self energy, who you really are and who you really want to be, and the positive characteristics, and making sure that you have all those other parts that are unblending from that, so you can be more true to yourself. Now, similarly but different, there's also theories out there where you don't have just like childhood, adulthood, and then older age, or you actually can go through like 5 major transformations in your life. And so who you are in one part doesn't necessarily who you are in the second part. And we as humans are constantly capable of change. Some people don't change that much, but we're capable of lots of transformation. And some people I know, I've met people in my travels that are in their 70s, 80s. They're like, yeah, I've already had 3 20-year careers for the most part. Now I'm just traveling and just live my life. And I don't know what my next career, my next life is going to look like. But
isn't that wild, man? I think about that a lot. Like, YOLO, but like also not at all. like you live like 5 times. You get like these blocks of, and maybe 20 years is a fitting like 3 to 4 times in life, assuming you live till 80. You get these like life altering. I mean, it's crazy. Like Laura, who was with us at that meal, she'll joke with me sometimes and be like, "Oh, I don't even remember my 30s." She's like, "You wouldn't remember me if we stopped talking or something." I'm like, "That's crazy. Like, of course I would." And she's like, "No, not really." And she's not old, so it's like amazing how you can go through a decade of your life. It's obviously informing so much of your present and your future. And, for me, it's probably a lot of repressed stuff, but like I have entire like black spots in my background where I'm like, yeah, I can't tell you from this age to that age. It's like gone.
It's a little repressed.
Yeah, definitely repressed. Yeah, we'll work on that another day, but do some sand work, or what's it called? I wanted to say EDM, but that's very different.
Yeah.
EDR or whatever it is. I forget what it's called.
It's EMDR.
EMDR, that's it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a little of that with my therapist and started to broach some of that. But that's really neat, man. So like to kind of parlay this into career, and this will be a good opportunity for us to shamelessly plug our amazing event, the My Core Collective, September 30th and October 1st in Eugene, Oregon. But Lee is going to be speaking and keynoting along with just this collective of great minds. And I'm incredibly humbled by the way that this event is coming together. It's an immense amount of work. I'm not doing most of the work, so I want to give credit where credit's due. It's Curtis and Susan Marie. It's Laura. It's just my amazing team, the My Core executive team, the My Core crew. But man, it's shaping up, and we're still, I don't know, 6-7 weeks out, and I can just feel the momentum. Like there was a moment where it was like, okay, we're getting traction, like people are interested, people are vibing on this. And then now it's coming together in this way. And you've been a huge proponent of that. I was super stoked and super humbled in Denver, where In fact, I don't know if you know this, man. You inspired the name change. We talked about it, right? Remember we talked about it head to toe, bro. I'm joking. We had two beds, but we were in the hotel, and I remember sharing this and kind of getting your take on it, and then implementing it. So not only did we talk about it, but it was your action and me experiencing it that sparked the idea. So we had originally thought we wanted to kind of neutralize the branding around this and make it sort of like it's presented by MyCore. But rather than come up with, kind of a cliche or corny, like, breaking the barriers, or, or like, the sky's the limit. Like we went with
unlimited.
Yeah, unlimited, prestige worldwide, wide, was like, okay, what would we call it? And we landed on the Core Collective. And then we were out there, like, preaching it. And the way that you championed for the event in Denver at another event, which is called Bridging the Gap, which is kind of one of those corny cliches, but it was a great event. Say it. Yeah, enjoyed it. It was awesome. You should go every year. But I was like, people are like coming up to me and being like, oh, Lee was talking to me about, or Lee mentioned, or Lee. And I'm like, okay, Lee, let's go, bro. I'm about to get you like a banner or like a flag to fly. It was in that moment that I realized, well, this would be a miss to not just imprint in their mind the brand and the name and the nomenclature MyCore. So it was a minor tweak. Most people probably don't even notice it, but it went from the Core Collective to MyCore Collective. You could call it the like lowercase t MyCore Collective. Reminds me of the scene in the Social Network with Justin Timberlake when he says drop the just Facebook. Yeah, so it was like drop the core, just MyCore. So we've since evolved that, and that's been coming to life in a cool way, and I am thrilled, like pumped in anticipation for what I believe is going to be really, really impactful. And I think it's in the name. It's this collective. It's this aggregate. In fact, even just yesterday with the team, I was kicking around because we're starting to map out the series of events that are to follow. And I was like, I feel like we could potentially like compete with TED Talk. Like we could say, hey, this thing that became popular in like mainstream, we're going to bring it to Main Street and think like TED Talks for Main Street, or from Main Street for that matter. So that's something that we're kind of kicking around, but we've stayed in this vein of, okay, we're going to speak leadership. We're going to talk people ops. We're going to talk marketing ops, so that there's some meat on the bone from a subject matter expertise standpoint. So Lee, tell us what you're going to be speaking about. I think you guys had to submit your topics by now, and maybe even title it. So if you know your title, and as you know, one of our core values and just like methods is leading with who. So I know we talked today and we got into some things. These are great insights. I hope that you will share that and even some more from the stage in your segment, your session. But give us a little prequel, man, a little preview of what you're going to be bringing to the stage at the MyCore Collective in Eugene, September 30th, October 1st. Be there, be square.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'll be talking about, kind of really honing back to where we started on the people side, and is really going to be talking about what is the framework involved in having amazing people operations. So in my experience, I've built a framework, but also about 22 different tools that really make it so that you're not just looking at it from the perspective of, yeah, I have a team, I have a system in place. And when people ask you about things, you're like, yeah, we've got that. Yep. To how do you make it so that, and I'm going to take this from my mentor that I talked to just about a week ago, is how do you romance new employees? And so you say, hey, I've got the full system beyond what most people are even thinking about.
Did you say romance?
I did.
Nice. Like what, how do you create this, like, man, I can't sleep, I can't eat, like I'm in love with this company, I'm in love with this opportunity. I mean, this is like up my alley because I've been told I'm like a cult leader before. So I'm like, yeah, tell me more about this. So yeah, that's really exciting. So this idea that like they're in their honeymoon phase, right? And obviously shit's going to get real at some point and it is a job, but like
Hmm.
steward and cultivate that moment so that it's imprinted like in their heart and they're like, man, this is part of my identity, this is part of my purpose, like I'm doing the thing that I was supposed to do.
Hmm.
Is that what you're saying? Because this I love this stuff.
Yeah. So the way he explained it to me, and I'm gonna paraphrase a little bit, it's like, say you're out dating, and you're like you're single, you're out dating. Do you want to service the person that you want to spend
Maybe.
time with you, or do
Okay.
you want to romance the person to spend more time with you? And so if you approach it from this mindset of how am I going to make them really interested in this, not just fulfill their
Yeah.
needs, but find a way to really make them be want to be around you, which I think is something that you haven't thought about in that way, but it's something you've, I wouldn't say perfected, but you've done really well at. And so you can just put in that terminology. And so how do you romance these people into wanting to work for your company? And my thought process is you need to have systems and skills in place. And so I have a full list of here's all the things that if you do these and you do them strategically, you're going to be able to romance those people to you a lot easier. Um, and especially in smaller businesses where they're like, all I can think about is I just need an employee. They need to do this task. And I'm like, yeah, but if you want somebody that is going to come and do that task, you need to be thinking about their future. You need to be setting up feedback systems. You need to be thinking about how can they grow in your company? What is your overall vision? And where do you see it in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Where do you want things to grow? And then how can you create paths for people to grow in your business so that you're not having massive turnover when you bring in people and they really develop skills. And from borrowing from another strategic thinker is, well, what happens if I train these people and they leave? And the response being, well, what happens if you don't and they stay and you're no longer really doing well? And so my thought and the way I phrase this is, or not phrase this, but construct it is you need to be building people up. And the more you build them, if you're a good fit still, great, they'll probably stay around. If not, and they move to somewhere else, then they're still continuing their journey. You're a part of it. Frankly, that can sometimes benefit you more. Sometimes you leave that company and they become the biggest partner at your new firm and you have just different
Right.
and better relationships. And underlying all of this is I know we've talked about it before, but I always love to talk about the different changes that are ascribed in, I think his name is James Clear, but Atomic Habits. And there's three different types of change. You can have outcome change, which is essentially goals. You have process changes, which pretty straightforward. And then you have mindset changes. And so I talk about you need to build this mindset of I'm a great employer. And by doing that, you're constantly thinking about how can I be better at this? How can I be better for my employees? How can I romance them better to be better at their jobs and want to be better at this?
That's great.
And so I talk about that and how that's the framework of really any of the services. Any way to improve your company is you need to adopt that mindset. I mean, you decided to adopt that mindset of I'm a CrossFitter, and now you talk about it constantly. And look, I mean, it's showing. So that's the way. That's just
I'm
one of the examples.
off my game lately, but yeah, that's hilarious, man. And good stuff. Like as you were sharing there, I'm stoked to take notes, and I'm going to be, I mean, as I'm talking to our speakers and getting into these speaker summits and like hearing the topics and the stories, I'm like, I am going to have a reserved seat on the front row for me to be taking notes, copious notes. I'm stoked to learn from such an amazing group collective of people. Measure what matters is one of our core values. So we have three core values at my
Mhm.
core: walk by faith, lead with who, and measure what matters. I read this book in 2018, the same year I founded MyCore, and I was like, inspired is not strong enough of a word. I was like, I had an epiphany, you know, it was like an awakening. And really what it was for me, and I'll drop the link in this episode so that people can get the book. If you haven't read it, you know, study it. I've read it. I think I'm on like 4 or 5 times now. And I have notes, and, you know, I was able to find this portion that I want to speak to because you triggered the thought. But, you know, I personally have been immersed in leadership, people development, and that's just kind of my jam. Like, if I have a forte, I think it's team building and romancing the workforce, I guess, in some form or fashion. But
I just want to interrupt you for a second. So I know I told you yesterday that I've created a daily post to go out to advertise MyCore Collective. What I didn't tell you is that romance is going to be a recurring theme in that. So now that we're talking about it, I think you're going to, when you see them, you're going to notice that it's kind of a theme throughout those. But.
Oh, that's cool, man. So that'll be a through line, you know, in that sequence of content. I love that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think a lot of times in leadership and in building teams and recruitment, like, people think, oh, it's going to be salary. And it's like, well, no, don't forget benefits. And it's like, well, sure, you know, but like, what does it really come down to? And then some even, and I felt this way, like, it's going to be recognition, you know, babies cry for it, men die for it. All of that has its place, obviously. But I love this portion here. It's right in the beginning. It's on page 10 of the book. It says, year after year, Gallup surveys attest to a worldwide employee engagement crisis. Less than a third of U.S. workers are involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work and workplace. That's pretty disturbing, right? Less than 1/3. This is where quiet quitting comes in, and, you know, mental health and all the things. Of those disengaged millions, more than half would leave their company for a raise of 20% or less. To put it more professionally, these hoes ain't loyal. Sorry. So anyway, in the technology sector, 2 out of 3 employees think they could find a better job inside of 2 months. Now, this was written a few years ago, so I don't think that's true right now in tech. But in business, alienation isn't an abstract philosophical problem. It saps the bottom line. More highly engaged work groups generate more profit and less attrition. This was part of the inspiration for our brand Profit Share, right? Is if people and people ops are solid and right and energizing, and like you're going to speak to, you have the framework and you're romancing and whining and dining, as Lee likes to do, right? The talent pool, then it's going to make you more profitable. According to Deloitte, the management and leadership consulting firm, yeah, we know who Deloitte is, bro. Issues of retention and engagement have risen to number 2 in the minds of business leaders, second only to the challenge of building global leadership. But exactly how do you build engagement? A 2-year Deloitte study found that no single factor has more impact than clearly defined goals that are written down and shared freely. Goals create alignment, clarity, and job satisfaction. So I found that really fascinating. I try to implement that in our culture, where we're like, hey, we have this North Star. We have this mission to be the world's most people-centric company. How do you even measure that, right? I mean, we talk about measuring what matters. Like, that's a crazy measurement. And what I found is you measure it in the day-to-day. You measure it in the moments where you go, to be or not to be, you know, to be the world's most people-centric company, to not be the world's most people-centric company. Even down to this very podcast, you know, and launching it just over a year ago, it was a simple sort of question or answer, which was, does that get us further away from or closer to being the world's most people-centric company? And conversations like this, I think, invigorate and sort of, you know, are proof positive that, yeah, that puts us closer to that mission. But that's just like out there, pie in the sky, North Star type shit, right? So how do you break that down to a 3-year plan, the annual goals, the objective of the company, and creating that alignment. And the book lays it all out. And I have studied it and done my best to implement it. But I just love the way that you framed that all out. I think it's going to be really impactful for business owners, leaders, movers and shakers, and the about 150 people that we're expecting in Eugene, Oregon. So I'm stoked, man, to be taking notes on that. But I don't know if you had a hot take on that as we kind of round third base, but I feel like you were speaking to that a bit, that like people are most inspired by their journey, right? Like they're the hero on the hero's journey of their story. And as an employer, as a leader, as an employer brand, you have to be a major chapter in that story. And if they choose to keep renewing with you, then great. Maybe they have 40 years with you and they retire, and that's part of their story. But even if they're only with you for 4 years or 4 months, it better be something that was so impactful that they go, yeah, I worked at this company for these years and it revolutionized my life because it was a part of my trajectory. And I think like people either get this or don't get this. And it amazes me how few companies get this, even when they have all the resources to back it up. I mean, we've built my core on a shoestring budget, and those shoes are not expensive shoes. They're Vans, right? So they're like a specific shoestring. And yet we have people that have tattoos of our shield and will take planes, trains, and automobiles to come to kind of random places like Eugene, Oregon, or Columbia, South Carolina, to be at our events. So I'm flexing on that, but I'm also like, listen up, people. Like there's an actual formula here. It's not random. It's not happenstance. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that as we kind of land the plane today, but I'm super stoked for your keynote, man. That's good stuff.
Yeah, me too. So one thing I wanted to say is what you're in that the end of that passage, you have the person from Deloitte saying, it's all about the goals. And then what you described is what I think Andy Dewar developed at Intel,
or
objectives
Andy
and key
Grove
results.
and John Dewar. Yep.
Yeah, that you had it. So the objectives and key results. And so your objective is that really big idea that's very qualitative. And then coming into the key results, which is how you measure that. So that's exactly what you're getting at, which is very top down, which is great, but it's very top down. Now, one of the speakers at Growing or Bridging the Gap, it was Rob Zabierski. He talks about mental aperture, which it comes from bottom up. And you start with tasks, goals, and dreams, which is kind of like that same OKR, but flipped a little bit.
Right.
And what he said was, to really see past the tasks, you have to see what the goals are. And to see past the goals to your dreams, you have to make the dreams bigger.
Yeah.
And so what I'm getting at with this is when you have not just the goals of the business, the dreams of the business, but those align with the people, your partners, your employees, anyone you talk to, and consistently draw back to how does doing this task how does this goal fit the dream, and you consistently create that alignment, that's where the magic happens. And again, if that dream of yours as the business is being a super successful business, one of your sub dreams should be being a great employer, and you need to find out how do I make that align with this person so that they see that same dream, or how those come together past the daily tasks, past the goals. Because if you've probably seen this in sales organizations, you can be given a goal and you're like, I don't really care about this goal. That's not really, doesn't make sense for me. Like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And where I think of misalignment with a lot of employers and their employees is bringing that objective, as Gore and say, and making it so that you have this overarching idea that brings people together. And I think one of the reasons why you've become a cult leader is because you have this really great objective / dream that people can get behind. And as long as you don't serve any Kool-Aid at any of these
Yeah,
functions, I
right.
think we'll be
No
okay.
Kool-Aid in Eugene. Oh, that's cool,
but
man.
otherwise, I'm really excited to talk about a lot of the nuts and bolts on how this is done. Really excited to see you again in Oregon
Yeah, man.
and talk a little bit more on my story of how I came to these ideas. And my memory of people's names is terrible. I had to look that up, to be completely honest, and I still screwed it up. But that's life sometimes.
And I only I just read it. So because I mean I got his name right there. So I had a little cheat code.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that was written by John Doerr.
Yeah, but Andy Grove, I think, is the way he described it was like he's been Johnny Apple seeding, this ideal, these OKRs, this operating system. And
Mm-hmm.
I was so inspired by this book that it actually has informed the way that we like position profit share and market share as operating systems, because he essentially says like
Mm-hmm.
this is the OS to your business. And I've been kicking around this idea of like the my OS. So
Mm-hmm.
Apple has the iOS, and they've obviously coined the iPhone and the iPad. And with
Mm-hmm.
my core, I was like, it'd be sick to have this like my OS where you're essentially saying like this is what you install into your business universally at the
Mm-hmm.
like just leadership executive level.
Mm-hmm.
And EOS, for example, has done really well, the entrepreneur operating system. So it would be a little bit of a like, I don't know, competitive with, and be like, hey, any glean from, because there's a lot of good stuff. I've got traction right here. I'm a big believer in EOS, but
Mm-hmm.
I also can't help myself, and I like to reinvent wheels. So I think there could be some nuances and some modernization, especially in the new
Mm-hmm.
world of work, because autonomy is so important to people, right? And autonomy and freedom are not the same thing. And I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times people give their employees all this freedom and then wonder why they're unproductive, and then they try to overcorrect and bring them back into the office. And it's like when you hit the rumble strips and then you jerk your car into the next lane and it cause a 3-car pile up. It's like, no, we need to just like veer back on track. So I feel like you and I could talk about this. This is up my alley. And what we'll have to do is do another episode or another like content day and maybe push it out through our people ops like channels specifically. But I'm glad we
Mm-hmm.
got to get a little bit into the meat and potatoes of what you're going to be discussing. It's going to be awesome. And I appreciate, I think somewhere in there was, I don't know if it was a compliment or a warning for people, but it's humbling. I appreciate that. And I think like something I dig about you, Lee, compared to maybe some of our other speakers, is you've been an early adopter of our culture and my core. I mean, I've been literally telling the story this way, saying we started doing these offsites in this brand, the Graduate Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And each time we did it, people would come that were partners or kind of part of our ecosystem. And then we realized like we need to bust this thing wide open and make it inclusive and make it a public event. It's still sort of exclusive because we're choosing the venues and selling them out rather than
Mm-hmm.
trying to like come one, come all. So this first event, the room that's just, I was just there, so it's like fresh on my mind, dude. It's sick.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the top floor of this building. It's in downtown Eugene. And if you've never been to Eugene, it's where the University of Oregon is, and it's like a big small town. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got these kind of like Main Street vibe, but it's a little booming metropolis in its own right. And kind of reminds me of like Annapolis, how it's a small town, but there's a lot of action going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the
Buildings are a little
top of
taller
this,
in Eugene, but
what'd you say?
so the buildings are a little bit taller in Eugene compared to Annapolis,
That's
but
true. Yeah.
otherwise,
That
yeah.
very much so. Yeah. There's like, yeah, I mean, they're almost not like skyscrapers, but they're bigger even than some of these buildings around here in downtown Jacksonville. I mean, it's kind of like a major, I don't know if it's a
Mm-hmm.
big, small town or a small city. It's cool though. And clean, and I dig it. So at the top of this hotel is this room, and it is windows 360 degrees. So we're going to be in this venue. It holds 157 people. and we're going to sell it out, like, for sure. We're even starting to pull from the local chamber of commerce there. We joined as a member in Eugene, and they're getting the word out. So anyway, if you're listening to this, get your damn ticket and book it and be there.
And use my code Lee50.
That's what I meant to say earlier. So thank you. Yes, use Lee's code from this episode, Lee50. You get $50 off the ticket. We're also going to the price goes up September 1st. So if you're listening to this in August, which this will be dropped in August, get it while it's hot. Anyway, I was just like there because I like to go on site and imagine and envision, and like literally I will crystallize and like manifest and be like, this room is going to be packed, and I'm pumped, like in anticipation as the weeks close in on it. But that space, that environment, it's gonna be, I think, game changing for people, and I know you're going to bring an immense amount of value to it. And I was stoked to get a little coming attraction. So I appreciate your time, man, sharing some good, some bad, a little bit of ugly, and I mean, you're a good looking guy, so you don't have a whole lot of ugly, but there's some pain in there that I know there's more where that came from. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I look forward to seeing you again, man. I don't think I'll see you before Eugene, but we'll obviously chat. We talk a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to. Really excited. It's going to be a great event. I talk about it constantly. If that wasn't abundantly clear, and definitely looking forward to getting some more one-on-one time then.
Heck yeah, man. And obviously we're going to have to carve away and get some food, and you lead the way. You pick the menu and the wine, and it'll be awesome.
There you go. It won't be like the Chinese restaurant with Tony. Where
oh my gosh, man! I meant to tell that story. As we close out, I know he resisted and he ate his words because he had like the worst dish. So you've got to succumb willingly to Lee's connoisseur ship, or however you say that, connoisseurness. Awesome.
And the biggest thing is believe that they're authentic if they look authentic. And he just got a little bit too much red chili, and I was like, I don't think you want that.
It didn't go well.
And he's like, yeah, it'll be fine. It was not fine.
Not fine. He sent me a picture of it. I was like, that looks awful. Like that looks just horrendous. It was like literally a bowl of peppers in like some goulash or something. So
the flavor was great. It was just painfully
spicy.
It was so spicy, and it's one of those peppers. I think it's the Szechuan or something. It just like your mouth is just tingling
the whole
like
time.
So much. And you asked for extra chili oil, and that's where it went wrong.
You're screwing up, Tony.
Yeah, it's like getting Indian food
podcast.
For sure. It's like getting Indian food in Arizona where they grow some of the spiciest peppers. My dad ordered me like a level 7. I was like, Dad, this isn't like Maine where level 7 is still kind of like is like super easy. This is
I'm not trying to get like molested by a pepper, like personally. So I stay in the bland, like give me the sweet stuff. Good stuff, man. Appreciate you, brother.
You too.
Awesome.
It's a good chat, and have a good one.
You too.